All right, so we are back here on the Zach Clark Show, and by far my favorite guest to date, because we have my dad here, Doug Clark, and I don't even know how to introduce him. He's wearing a suit. I got notes here. Like, I don't even know why I need notes. It's my dad. I mean, I'll probably come up with some good questions to ask him, but here we are, and I want to start by saying I love you, Dad. Thanks for being here.
Well, I love you too, son, very much. Yes, I do.
It's we've been at this thing for a while, and
yeah,
it's funny because I still walk into this interview and I'm like, I just don't want to get emotional. That's just our human nature. I don't want to cry. I don't want to show vulnerability, and in a lot of ways, that's like something that I've gotten more comfortable sharing with the world once I got sober. It's okay to be vulnerable.
When you said to me, you said I want to have my dad on. Why now? We've talked about it before.
There's a couple reasons. One is I feel like the world right now could really use some wisdom from people like my dad, who have seen a lot of life, seen a lot of different political leaders, and a variety of really good days and really bad days, and probably have some good insight into what's happening right now in the world. I think my dad's really smart, and I think that he has a lot to offer, not just, his company and our family and his friends, but so there's that reason. And then I just, my dad said something to me, you said something that's really stuck with me. And maybe we'll start here in that, as you've gotten older, you started to feel a little bit more lonely because some of your friends are not here anymore. And I've tried to take on, some of that and in our friendship. And so what has that been like? I mean, your best friend, Mike Dunn, passed a few years back, and we can't avoid the grave. How are you dealing with that today? I mean, that comment really stuck with me.
Well, I would have to say, first of all, it's not just Mike Dunn that has left this world in the last couple of years, but two of my best friends in life passed over Thanksgiving weekend 2 years ago. And my other friend is in a situation where he is dealing with, the loss of mind kind of thing. So it's the four closest people in my life, really, when you think about it. And so I think the thing that has left a tremendous void in my life right now, and friends like Shelley are in Haddonfield and that type of thing, is that friends are people you can sit down and talk to and really be open and honest. And a friend will tell you, well, you're dead wrong on that one, buddy. And, you step back and go, oh, if he says I'm dead wrong, maybe I am dead wrong. And so that's what you miss, because acquaintances won't tell you like it is. They won't, because they don't know you well enough. And the thing you said to me is I just don't have anyone to talk to. That's it. Bottom line. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell, Zach. Yeah.
And it's interesting because when we look at the mental health numbers right now, it's young men that are struggling, and then it's older men that are struggling with their mental health because what you just said. And I'm a big proponent of therapy and all that stuff, and I feel like you even just sharing that is going to help people who are in your same situation.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's just a fact of life, right? What do they call it? Last man standing kind of thing. So,
but were you always that way? Earlier in your life, had other men around that you had strong friendships?
I've always, I would say to you in my lifespan, going through grammar school, I had a very close friend, John Hopkins. And then when I got to college, I had a very close friend, Robbie Bacall. And so I'd have to answer that question. Yes, I have. I have had what I would call a true close friend throughout the, the life passage. Yep. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about like my father, who, I wish he had closer relationships with other men, because I feel like he tends to like carry the weight of the world himself, and I just, obviously he has a relationship with my mom, but I still think, I'm married myself. I still think there are things that, not that you aren't completely open and transparent with your partner. It's just that when you're going to the problem to someone who maybe is involved in the problem, it's just harder to talk about it in an open way, where you can be more vulnerable and honest about like, this is what's going on and I'm scared, and I think having other men in your life as you go through the journey is important.
Well, it is, and I think I could say this about every one of those men that I just talked about, and particularly the ones in, my later years and, adult, mature years, were really, truly friends. And you could talk to them, and they'd get you through the tough times and the good times. It was both. And, they would pump you up when you needed to be pumped up. Like, this will pass. Mm-hmm. You'll get by this. Mm-hmm. And, it just so happens that I have one of those individuals right now that I've become pretty close with in Naples. And I'm in the process of getting a loan that's going to transition, the business kind of thing. And he sat in front of me. He introduced me to a banker. And this is what a friend does too, right? He said to the banker, and they got to the 3 C's of banking, like character is number 1, right? So I want to tell you about the character of this guy that's sitting next to me. If you guys don't give him the loan, I will. Mm-hmm. And we're talking $4 million is what we're talking about. So it's not, that's what friends really, really do, and so.
Yeah,
I've been blessed. I have been blessed my whole life, having those kind of folks around me.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that you hold so near and dear to your heart is the way that you grew up in this town, Elmer, New Jersey, and it was a simple existence growing up, right? I mean, can you talk a little bit about the way that you grew up? I mean, you lost your parents at a pretty young age, right? I mean,
I was 30.
Okay.
Yeah, that's young. I mean, they were both 52 when they passed separately. It wasn't an accident or anything. My mother passed 3 years after my dad did. But, they were both at 52 years old. But coming back to your question, I would have to start by just saying one thing that I am that has been a blessing and maybe sometimes been a little bit of a curse. I am an outlier. I've been an outlier my whole life, whether it was in grammar school or when I lived in Elmer, New Jersey. My parents moved from Florida up here. We lived with my grandfather, and everybody around me was a farmer. They would go out hunting on hunting day in November and all these other kind of things. And I was an outlier. I didn't fit the mold of all the kids. I didn't go to Future Farmers of America in high school and those kinds of things. So it was an outlier then, and as I grew up, everything along the way, I was an outlier going to college because who went to the University of Miami from Elmer, New Jersey, and I came home the first time from college on Christmas break, and I had dyed my hair yellow, blonde, and I had brought home these different clothes that I wasn't wearing jeans, I was wearing tight peg pants, and I can remember this to this day. A couple of my friends came knocking at the door, and Dad said, "Is Doug home? I hear he's back from Miami." Yeah, the blonde bombshell is asleep still in his bedroom.
Yeah.
I could hear him say that. And so, but it's been through my business career and everything else. So, Yeah.
But do you think that
How
was?
did you pick Miami?
Yeah.
Is that a PG? I know the story, but
You
I'd
know
like
the
to read-
story?
yeah.
Okay, yeah. Oh, well, you know, I didn't go directly to college. And so I was working in, my dad sold the gas station to another gentleman in the town. And I stayed there and I said, man, this is okay. I'm not going to go, I don't have to go to college. I go drag racing at night and, you know, go out and have a couple of pops and all that kind of stuff. Life was good until one hot summer day. I had a school bus on the lift. I forgot to not lift up on the lift, but just on the lift, so I get it underneath it with a creeper to drain the oil, and I forgot to block the back wheels, and it drifted off of the lift and almost hit a car on the fuel island, and that could have really been a really problem. So that day, I went up to the drugstore to get something, and there was the Playboy issue that had the top 10 Playboy schools. And I said, maybe it's time to move on. So I picked the top 3. And I picked University of Arizona, University of Colorado, University of Miami. I don't know whether it was in that order. And I picked Rutgers as a safe school, what would be known as a safe school today. I got accepted to the 3, but I got turned down by Rutgers. My grades weren't that good. Then the next decision was, okay, what's closest? Miami was only 1,300 miles away versus out west. So that's how I picked my college.
But do you think because you're talking about being an outlier, which to bring it back to addiction and substance use, a lot of people. I certainly felt like I didn't really belong, yet I belonged. And a lot of that was internal, not necessarily on paper. Do you think, you moved from Florida to a small town, you sort of felt like an outsider, you were a young person, but do you think you always sort of had like an entrepreneurial mind, or like, I'm going to go somewhere and do things and see the world? Or
no, I don't think that was it at all. I really don't. I think what it created some good things and some bad things in me as a human being, okay? I think there was fear, the fear that I wouldn't be accepted, right? And fear that I would fail, or, that kind of fear. But it also sort of made me work hard, to make sure I was accepted. But it also created sort of a risk-taking attitude that I never lost. Even today, I'm still taking business risk that most people wouldn't take at this point in their lives. And so I think it created this attitude of, I think it's the right thing to do. I'm going to do it and live with the decision, and not, I don't look back.
Who instilled that in you, though? Because that's something that I would always, when I would explain my dad to people, I would say he's one of the more honest guys I've ever met. And he's one of the more loyal guys I've ever met. Was that your parents? Was that growing up where you grew up? Was that those principles? Where did that start for you?
I think it was 2 things. I think it was my dad and my mom. Without a question, they were the most honest people. They didn't drink. They didn't party. They worked hard. She worked in an emergency room and became the superintendent of nurses in this very small Elmer Community Hospital. And my dad was just a hard worker. He built 2 houses that we lived in. And there was one time I remember we had a big storm came through, and he just put the foundation in. Can you picture him putting brick on top of brick? And we came back, and it all caved in. And he never showed remorse or anything. Why did this happen to me? No, he just said, okay, it happened. I'll go back and put the foundation back up again. So I'd have to say it was my parents, but I also have to say Norm Robinson had a big impact on my life. Norm Robinson was the troop master of Troop 60, Boy Scouts. And Boy Scouts were the only thing we had. We didn't have anything other than that, and to as young kids. And it was the life and he was the kind of guy that just made it so significant. We would do turkey dinners where we'd be the waiters and the town would come in and buy the tickets. And we went to Philmont, New Mexico. And he took us out there, and it was just a tremendous. And then the Jamboree was going to be held in Valley Forge in 1956. And here again, I have all these, my friends, right? And he sends me to Schiff Boy Scout training camp in northern New Jersey. It doesn't exist now, where I had my first taste of leadership training. And he made me the leader of our troop when we went to the Jamboree in Valley Forge. So, that's sort of that outlier kind of conversation. I think it's important to understand that I don't follow the crowd all the time. I go my own way, and
that's including, there's these beautiful apps in the year 2025 called Waze and MapQuest or Maps, and my dad likes to find his own ways to places. We call that Doug-gistics for anyone listening. If there's a way that it says this is going to be the shortest way, he likes to chime in and say, but what if we think about it this way? And the whole family has learned to just say, let's go Dad's way.
Yeah, I think it's a generational epidemic.
So you go to Miami, you come back, you start working, CPA, accountant, Drexel Burnham.
Yeah.
Why'd you leave Miami, though?
Excuse me?
Why did you leave Miami after school?
That's a great question. There's a real answer for that. When another outlier, all my friends said, don't take Miss Zukowski for accounting. Actually, when I got to Miami, they said, well, what courses do you want to take? I said, I don't care, just so I don't have to take a foreign language. And they said, well, the only place that is a business school, so you go into the business school. So I went into the business school. Miss Zukowski was a spinster that taught cost accounting. And everybody said, avoid her because she's tough and she gives too much work and all this other stuff. Bad reputation. Well, it worked out that I had to take her because it was the way my schedule worked out. I had to take her. She befriended me, and at that time, Florida, there was only one national firm that was allowed to practice accounting in Florida, and I think it was Haskins is. And everybody else, none of the Big Eight could come into Florida and practice because they had this grandfather rule that protected all the local accountants, right? So she, without me knowing it, again, called her contacts at Pricewaterhouse, Philadelphia, and she was well respected by the accounting firms because of she gave good classes. My friends thought it was, avoid it, but for the wrong reasons. And so she got me into Pricewaterhouse, gave me a shot. And there was an available, I've told Zac this story too. So there's 35, big recruiting class, 35 new accountants coming into the Philadelphia office of Pricewaterhouse. And after we did a 30-day training, we'd go back to the office, and there was a thing called the available room. And so you were picked as, when a job came up and the senior or whoever decided, they'd pick from the available room. It's sort of like the draft that's coming in. Yeah, right. And while we were waiting there, all we passed the time with was playing Battleship. Well, there was down to two, and the guy was picked, and I was the last one. I had nobody to play Battleship with, but anyhow,
you were the last pick.
I was the last pick.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, the whole story is
last pick of the draft.
I'm just thinking that, I know we're going to get into it, though, that you've gone on and have a very successful business career, and you go to college, and you're like, I just don't want to take a foreign language. Where do I go to do that? And they say, go over to the business school. And that sends you on a trajectory, that helps make your life,
Well, I think, part of what I think we've heard is that timing plays an awful important part in life. Timing and It really does.
Yeah.
And so the timing of moving to Price Waterhouse and then putting me on a job called Drexel Harriman Ripley, where as a junior, all I did was go down to the basement and count securities when they did the audit. But then this gentleman who was running the whole operations, the back office operations, this gentleman by the name of Jack Rich, he, for some reason, he saw something in me, and he hired me away from Price Waterhouse. And from there, it was, that
Set your career.
that changed my whole career. I knew I wasn't going to be a partner at a Price Waterhouse. I was too. They're strict, So
Yeah, type A.
even today frustrates me with legal and accounting regulations and all that stuff. It's just
Yeah, you and me both. We have a problem
just-
with rules and authority,
it's
but
particularly when it comes to common sense kind of stuff, and it's just drives me crazy. But so that's sort of that
yeah.
that just being at the right place at the right time, and so eventually I became at that organization, which is now known as Drexel Burnham, because they bought Drexel Harriman Ripley. At one time, I was the youngest board member, 28 years old, on this blue blood investment banking firm in Philadelphia, New York, nationwide, responsible for all of the operations, and you think about it. And then one day, Paul Miller, who was the president, called me into his office, and he said, and he was also the head of the trustees at the University of Penn and the Wharton School, and he said, "Doug, we have this guy. He's going to be great, but we just don't know what the hell to do with him today." So, it was a paper crisis on Wall Street. So he said to me, maybe he could help you. And his name was Mike Milken, who became an icon in the whole financial world, and it is today. And talk about a guy giving it back. I mean, he's really giving it back and big time to, all kinds of things, mostly in the cancer world, but he gives back tremendous.
It's wild, the people we meet on the journey. All right, so I want to get into the Clarks here. The Clarks here.
Yeah.
You meet my mom in what year? Rexy's Bar was your first date?
It wasn't Rexy's Bar. It was my good friend Roger who
set you guys up.
Well, he met Mom. I worked in Philadelphia, and there was a bar next to the office, and that's where he met Mom. Yeah.
And he introduced you guys.
Yeah, because he was married, and he said, well, I have this guy. He's not married. He's a race car driver and all this other kind of blue smoke. And so, that's...
We just
how-
go back there for a second,
Legitimately,
though, with the race car driving. Because I heard drag racing back in
No,
New Jersey,
that was his dream, to race the Indy 500. He did it. I mean, we have VHSs of my dad's cars wrecking. He, tell the people. I mean, you were an Indy...
tell us.
You mean on what, the race
Well,
car
when you were
career?
a kid, you said you were drag racing. So what's that like? A Friday night, down the road, we're
that
racing
was-
for
no,
50
yes,
bucks?
Saturday, it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Okay.
Because we had this little road alongside of this street in Pole Tavern. That's where we spent our...
The Pole Tavern Rebel Rods.
Yes, the Pole Tavern Rubber Rods. Yeah, that was a club we established. And
So you were drag racing, and the kids today are vaping. I mean, I guess it's similar, Both risky.
Yeah, one's a little bit more exciting.
But then you
and
got into
romantic.
professional race car driving. I mean, that was self-funded. I mean,
and I would, I'd go try and get advertisements and I had some pretty good advertisers. I had Skoll before it became really famous and with NASCAR, but...
So how old are you when you're doing this?
I started racing at 32.
Wow, all right.
Yeah, I was too old. Most of the good race drivers are already... They're go-karts and they keep going up. And it's like starting golf at 30. It's too late,
Yeah.
But you made it pretty far.
I did. I got to the if you look at it, AAA ball is, I got AAA ball. The next step was the majors. It would have been IndyCar racing. I raced against all the, Michael Andretti and Ari Leyendyke and all those guys. I raced against those guys in the series we raced every weekend that the IndyCars raced, and I raced every track that the IndyCars raced, whether it was Long Beach Island, Road America,
Michigan, right?
Michigan, yeah, all over.
So where are you balancing your professional life, like your the finance, what you're doing? Do you have kids? Are you how are you?
Well, at that point, I had my own business,
Uh-huh.
and it was a truck dealership and a truck leasing and rental, and I was also running a national association called Amtralease, which was a group of independent truck leasing companies that was really formed to provide reciprocal road service across the United States as well as group purchasing. So yeah, I was doing that. I was doing all those things and really not doing any of them very good, as it turns. If I had focused, maybe I might have become a IndyCar race driver, or I might have become a very large leasing company. But doing all those things and balancing all those, it just.
But you learned.
I did. Yeah. Every step of the way, I learned.
Was there a crash that ended the driving? Was there any? When did you stop racing, or do you still race?
No, I don't. I stopped when I was. I only had. It was funny. I had in Long Beach Island, Long Beach in California.
Uh-huh.
There was the start of a race, and Michael Andretti's cousin was in the race, and he would come out of this hairpin. He blew his engine and he tried to get across, and I ran right into the back of him and broke my foot. But the amazing thing was they helicoptered me out and took me to the hospital on a helicopter, which it wasn't necessary, but that's what they did. So they put a splint on, and I caught a plane that night and came back to New Jersey. So that was my worst accident.
I just have Days of Thunder in my head. Did you ever see that movie, the Tom Cruise movie?
Yeah.
That's my only. That's all I know about racing is Days of Thunder.
We've learned. I mean, I appreciate racing just from growing up in the Indy 500, and there was years there that stuff was really fun. But like everything else in this world, it got ruined by league splitting and driver splitting, and then they came back together, and who knows, it's IRL or something now. But anyway, so you meet mom. Roger introduces you to mom.
Yes.
You guys decide to start. You get married. You decide to start a family, and along came me. At some point there, about 10 years later.
Yeah, you were
in your early 40s when you had me, right? That math? I don't want to give out too much math here.
Well, maybe I think I was in my early 40s and mom was in mid 30s, right? Yeah. So
And what kind of kid was I?
That's a great question, and
because this is where
I'm just going to say this to you. When you were between 8 and let's say 15 or 16, you provided me some of the most joyous moments of my life. And I say that because with Rachel and Matt, I was totally involved in the business. And when you came along, I said, well, I'm going to take some time out and, be a father. And, so baseball was our connection. And all the way through when you went to the American Legion World Series in Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah.
All the way. And so, and I just lived my life with you through baseball. And we enjoyed sports, and we enjoyed going to the Eagles game. So I never suspected at all, ever, that, and you probably drank way before I even became aware. But I just never, I thought, there was one coach I think you had in high school when you were trying to decide what college to go to. And Snyder, and he said, well, he's a little bit of a wild hair. I didn't know what he meant by that, but I guess he knew more than maybe he was telling me as a high school senior. So anyhow, I don't know whether that answers your question or not.
When you were in high school, were you partying? Was there a bridge starting to
Yeah,
happen?
I think this is what's interesting and fascinating for parents, right? A lot of parents listen to this show, and it's very hard as we kind of shift this episode. And we could talk for hours and hours and hours about all of our stuff, our family and our lives and your life. It's a blessing, but I think it's important for the listeners to have some insight to the father-son relationship as it pertains to substance abuse. And the way that you answered that question is perfect, because from those years, 8 to 16, we spent a lot of time together. And whether you knew I was drinking or not, everything else I was doing gave you the ability to look past that.
Yeah.
And that's what I think a lot of parents deal with.
Yeah.
They know that their kids are probably not doing some things that are so savory, but they're their kids.
All right.
So you coached me in Little League, and I'll never forget, into kind of like, you get to the big field and now you're playing baseball from like the full distance. And then I go into high school and you kind of stopped coaching me. And yeah, I started drinking late middle school, early high school.
Well, I was coaching you from the stands, and that came to a quick halt one day when I just yelled out to him. I said, just throw strikes. Don't pay attention. Dad, shut up.
No, that's not the actual story is this. I was a decent pitcher. My whole...
You were very good.
But my shit was this, kind of how I live life today. I would walk the bases loaded, and then I'd strike out the side. I would just find myself in these situations that I didn't need to be in, and then I would buckle down and say, bring it on. So in classic Zac form, I was having one of these, stretches where I was throwing a lot of balls, and my father from the sideline yells, start throwing strikes.
Yeah. Don't forget the guy on third or something like that.
I step off the rubber.
Yes, you did.
And I think I held the ball up and I said, you want to come out here? And like he's in the stands and the whole, and that was just kind of the thing. And we had our moment. And I said, I think there were some choice. Hey, mother effer, you want to, come try and throw some strikes, because I was pissed and I was fiery, but it was one of those moments we'll never forget.
That was the end of my coaching career.
No, that's not true. I was always grateful for that. You and Mom, and like the way that you supported my baseball career was awesome. Those were some of the best memories, but it did shift. It did shift here, and I don't know if you remember this, but when I was that year, we went to the American Legion World Series. There was some drinking with the parents that took place. I don't know if but that's with my first, and then what that told me is like, it's okay to drink. Because we were, this whole summer, we were from May through August. We were all over the place. Binghamton, New York, Bartlesville, Oklahoma, Gaithersburg, Maryland. We were all, and you're in hotels every weekend for these like mini tournaments. Yeah. And if I was a starting pitcher and I wasn't pitching the next day, I would have a couple beers with my parents at night.
Mm-hmm. Similar. But a question I have for you, and which could be helpful to people, kids who are struggling with substances. To be able to step off the mound in the middle of a baseball game and yell at your dad. Obviously, you guys were close. Yeah. And now you're starting to drink and maybe do things that you know aren't right or acceptable. Did you have any guilt? Did that affect your relationship with your dad? Were you starting to pull away a little bit, or no?
So there was a couple things that happened for me. I knew that my dad really loved that I played baseball, and I loved it too. I also loved drinking, and that I always found my drinking getting in the way of me performing at the level that I really think I could have. And so I felt guilt around that, but I also wasn't willing to put the booze down. And he probably had like in college, right? Like we would always have these debates around, because I was a starter one year and then I was a reliever, and we would always get pissed at Paul Saikia, who was my college baseball coach, for putting me in the bullpen, but that was probably what I should have been doing. Like, when I'm really looking at it realistically, like, I'm a lefty. I like, if I actually want to try and make it past college, like, being a left-handed specialist or a closer probably suits my personality better than, but.
No, I think that's, the wisdom. I think Paul had the wisdom to put you there. And
but I guess my question for you, Dad, is like, when did you first question my drinking? Or did that not even occur until?
I don't think it really occurred until I was beaten over the head with it. And because part of being an outlier, I'll come back to that word again, is you can put things aside and just focus on what you're focusing on. And really, I don't know that rationalization is the right word, but there's some word out there that says, and your mom says this about me, I compartmentalize things and don't let it drag me. I can put them over here and not let it affect any other part of my life, right? Until, it becomes so overwhelmingly to a point where you have to acknowledge that it's either good or bad kind of thing, right? And so that's what I think happened in my relationship with you and in terms of my dealing with the drinking issue. I drank as a young kid, and I drank a fair amount of beer. And
you drank a fair amount of beer with me. I mean, there was, look, I'll cut to the chase here. So I graduated college, which was awesome. 4 years. You drove out every game, whether I was due to pitch or not, you were there. I mean, in the black Corvette, you would pull in, you'd watch the game, and we'd go out to dinner. I mean, some of those meals at Outback, and I mean, like, I hold that shit so close to my heart.
Right.
Like, you don't even know the memories that I have from, there's 30 guys on a team, 10 parents are coming. And I'm fully aware that you're running a business and mom would come. I mean, it was really special. And so I graduate college and, the baseball thing kind of goes away. And I think that affected our relationship a little bit. And I got a job, my first job in Conshohocken in Pennsylvania. And it was being a recruiter that you helped me get the job. Mike Dunn, who we mentioned earlier in this podcast, and Marty Judge with the Judge group out there. And it was a party environment, and like it didn't have to be, but I chose to be a part of that. And then our relationship, I think, rekindled around going to some games. And I remember we got the Phillies tickets. This is probably, so I graduated college in high school in 02, college in 06. The Phillies won the World Series in 08.
Yeah.
The season before that, in 08, we had these packages where we had we basically had half the season, and we would go to the games every night. And when we would get up to leave, there would be a 30-pack empty of beers under us, and one of us was driving home. I mean, that's a fact.
Yeah.
Most of the times, me. I think I had less to lose, and so we were party brothers.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Which made it confusing when it finally came time to get sober.
Yeah.
I think for you and for me.
For both of us, for sure. Yeah.
Did you feel like which wouldn't be true, but did you feel like, did I contribute to my son's problem in any way?
I didn't.
Good, because I don't think you should.
No, I didn't. Again, I don't look back. Good, bad, indifferent. And I can't do anything about the past. I can only do what needs to be done for the future, and sometimes that doesn't work out so good. But anyhow, I just have lived my life, with a couple of things that probably my mom taught me more than my dad. But you're judged by the folks you go out with, and so as I matured, that became very prevalent, and having friends like Mike Dunn and Dr. Goldberg and Rich Lunsford, and those, it helped me
Yeah.
develop as a man and become a better man, and those kinds of things. But no, I never felt guilt that I did anything wrong, because, I didn't have the disease, okay? So I just felt that all of our partying was just a natural thing. There was nothing untoward about it other than, the drinking and driving part of it is not good, obviously. But no, I didn't. I never felt.
That's good.
Well, you also took on this identity, I think, with your friends and our family of being the junkyard dog, which basically meant you would have no problem staying up late and being the last guy standing and waking up, to go to work or take care of your responsibilities the next day.
Yeah.
And I tried to kind of live that as well. Do you remember the brain tumor? I mean, do you remember?
Sure, I do.
What do you remember about that? Because that was a pivotal moment.
Well, I just remember, the diagnosis. And when we got that diagnosis, your mom and I, and knowing, and I think Shelley might have really steered us in the right direction as to who to get to do that. That was traumatic. That was traumatic. That, when they're going into the brain and the back of your skull, and then I just remember the pain when we went to your hospital to visit with you, and you screaming out at the nurse that, I want more drugs. And then I remember you coming home and being on the couch and, taking the opiates at that point in time, never suspecting or never thinking that it would grow into something that it did, obviously.
Right. Well, there was no education.
Right. No, and I think at that time, that was the prescribed medicine, right?
Yeah.
Everybody would take it, and I guess it really works strong. I've never had it, so I don't know, but it must work wonders for the pain.
Yeah.
And you weren't using opioids at that time.
I tried them, but I think that was the first time that I used them consistently over a period of time, and something in my brain and my body and my soul said, I need that. I need those drugs. And, I remember it a little bit differently in the sense that I was feeling sick for a few months leading up to that. And everyone at that point kind of assumed it was just, I was just partying too much. Because I was always as a kid, I always had stomach problems. It was all kind of just whatever it was. I think it was a lot of it had to do with the way that I was living. But it's interesting, your perspective, because I think there was probably some other people in my life who started to recognize it before you did. Mom being one of them, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Mom had a better grip on it. And actually, towards the end, when her and Catherine just lived in Florida, they wouldn't come home because they were, so upset with the way I was probably not addressing the issue. That tough love. I wasn't giving tough love. And I think your mom and Catherine saw it. Matt saw it. I was in denial. That, no, it's not a problem. You guys are all overstating it. And then that day I took you to the office and we were crossing the speed line, and I just yelled at you. I said, you're trying to kill me.
Yeah.
Because something happened the night before.
That was your moment where you stepped off the mound and yelled back at me. And
said,
You're trying to kill me.
Yeah.
And did you hear that?
Yeah, I heard it.
We were living alone. We were just he and I living in the house
So
together.
the picture to paint it is.
Yeah, paint it.
Yeah. So my mom and my mom and sister are living in Florida.
Uh-huh.
I had been to rehab one time. I had been married. I'd been to rehab one time. I got out of rehab. I started drinking again. And my wife at the time, Jen, who our family holds no ill feelings towards, she made a decision to leave. But she wasn't actually going to leave. She made me leave the house we were living in. So I moved back home with my parents at 26 or whatever years old. And I had seen an addiction psychiatrist. No one knew what to do. I mean, this is 2010. We are far more advanced today than we were then. The thing that my dad did really well is he never gave up. You just never gave up. And for all the things that you can say you did wrong, that was the thing that probably saved my life, if I could say that. So from January of August until August, me and my dad were basically living in my childhood home, and he was giving me it was so screwed up. I mean, there was like a $20 a day allowance. He was giving me Suboxone, which was the medication. I had a job. I was working for you,
Why was he giving you the medication? Because after the first rehab,
I was an opioid. So Suboxone is without going into the details and the medical side of it, Suboxone basically is a drug that helps you to not do heroin or to do opiates.
Yeah.
And so my dad was giving that to me every morning so that I could be a functioning human. You can also abuse it and sell it. So there was that element to it too. But yeah, we were driving to work together to the office one day, and he pulled over to the side of the road, and I've never seen you reach your boiling point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then that summer, we didn't own the shore house, so we would do these 2-week stays at the Jersey Shore, and I was a mess. And so I made my little appearance down at the Jersey Shore in August. So this is August of 2011. And the family's there. I think my brother had one kid, Jack, my nephew. And so we were still, whether or not I was drinking or not, it was always a question when we'd sit down to dinner, am I going to order a beer or not? And if I ordered the beer, everyone in the family would freak out. There was just no playbook on any of this shit. And I left. And you probably didn't hear from me for a couple days.
No, what happened
I got arrested.
Yeah, what happened was that, first of all, again, the whole family, my wife was saying he's using why he's here with the kid, with the grandchildren. And I said, no, he's not doing that. He's not doing that. And so that was the weekend when the Irma, one of the big hurricanes, we had to leave the shore. That was on a Friday night. And the next day, it was a Saturday. And when we got there, there was a voicemail from the Pennsauken police saying that, he was arrested, and if you want to come and get him, come and get him. And the car was towed away to someplace. So we went there, and I said, we're here to pick up...
I'd gotten a DUI on the side of the road. I was parked on the side of the road, scratching off lottery tickets, doing drugs and drinking, and a cop pulled up on me, and... I wasn't driving the car, actually, and they said, you're going to jail.
Yeah, you were parked in that
Cooper River.
Yeah, the golf thing. And so I said, I'm going to go, let's go pick him up. We go there and walk in, and we're here to pick up Zach Clark. He says, hey, he's gone. Well, who picked him up? No, he just walked out. And he walked to Camden. So I said to my wife, I'm going to go in the office. I'm going to just... I can't deal with this. So I'm in the office, phone rings. Lady from Camden.
It's a Saturday morning.
Lady from Camden.
So I probably got arrested on a Wednesday or Thursday. I think I got arrested on a Thursday.
You got arrested on Thursday.
Because the Eagles had a preseason game.
Correct.
Yep.
And a Friday was when we came back. And Saturday was when we went to pick you up and you were gone. And she called. The bank called. Your son's here trying to cash a check, and I just want to make sure that you're aware of this. I said, can you hold him? Can you hold him there? I'll try. And I walked in. I'll never forget this as long as I live. Walk in, there he's standing, waiting, and I think you were surprised to see me, right? Oh. And I said, we're going home, son. We're going home. And it was a Labor Day weekend, and we took him up.
I never forget. I mean, when you put your arm on my arm, that was like I still today, I can't do it. I mean, it's like the bank is this big old bank. I mean, the high ceiling. I mean, like, it's not this typical bank.
Right.
There was a spirit in that room that was undeniable. And that was Rhonda Jackson. I mean, Rhonda called you.
Yeah.
And she could, I think about it, she could have had me arrested.
Yeah.
Did you feel differently going into that bank, or were you?
I was panicked that, it was a 10-minute drive from my office to that bank. But she called me one time while I was driving, and she said, I don't know how much longer I can hold him. I was in a panic. I just wanted to get him. Yeah. I didn't want him to get away from me, go on the streets of Camden or whatever he was going to do. It was pure panic. And when I walked in the bank and saw him, I was so relieved. So, that was my reaction. And that's when I said, we're going home. And we did go home.
Yeah.
And I think it was the start of him coming home.
Yeah, I mean, that day I'll never forget. And there's a couple other things that I think are interesting about that story. I've told it so many times, but you decided to go into work on a Saturday.
Yeah.
You were sitting at your desk.
Right.
She called that number.
Yes.
Right. What are the chances? And what are the
Never
chances?
pick it up. Never pick it up. I don't know why I did. Maybe on the hopes that it was, who knows what.
Well, it was. I mean, yeah. And then the interesting part is I think we went home that night and I started to withdraw. So I told my parents I needed to drink, and I'll never forget I drank a huge thing of wine and I got sick in our living room. And I remember Mom cleaning it. I mean, I just think about the wreckage that families have to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then my last drink
was at the hotel.
This is a great story, man. So Karen Treatment Center's in Warnersville. Mm-hmm. We decided that I was going to go there.
Right.
And we drove halfway, basically, to Morgantown to a Holiday Inn, or what is it? Do you remember the hotel?
It was a Holiday Inn. Yeah.
Morgantown.
Yep.
Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Oh.
And we knew I was going to rehab the next day, and I sat with my parents, and I'll never forget. They called last call, and my dad, I think, made a toast. He probably said, "Cheers to this being your last drink."
Yeah. Yep.
And that was my last drink.
Yeah.
Cold Coors Light.
I shouldn't laugh.
On August 29th of 2011. No, it's hilarious. Come on. We
get
to laugh about it.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely laugh about it, but I feel like, honestly, what's shooting off my head right now is just the word love. Because there just was so much love, And I think about, being a father myself and just always seeing my son as my little boy, and it's it's just terrifying, And the fact that you stayed together and you had this relationship, I mean, it's just, we've spoken to a lot of people about addiction and obviously our history and professional life, and I just feel like more and more and more and more you can come up with all the science and the words, but it's love, really, and people give up.
Yeah, you didn't give up. I mean, you didn't give up. But
No.
that's been your life.
Right. My children have been through, I'm not proud to say this, but I went bankrupt in 1991. And, but I am proud to say that the neighbors in our town, Haddonfield, Rich Lunsford, who was a gentleman that was a friend, supposedly gathered the group of friends, said, we're not going to let Doug lose his house. We're going to make sure the mortgage gets paid. You've got to feel so blessed when those kinds of things happen. I didn't know that for years. It went by before somebody finally told me that story.
Wow.
And so, you just don't. My dad, going back to the foundation collapsing in a home, I just watched his reaction to that. I mean, I was just crushed. And he didn't show one, just got to put it back together. And so that's when I went bankrupt in 1991. bottom of the barrel. I didn't know what was going to happen. The business went bankrupt, and so that's what happened there. But then, again, blessed. My wife didn't leave me. My family stayed with me. And between addiction and bankruptcy, they're two of the most prevalent causes of divorces. And my wife never left. Never left. In fact, she worked, raised the kids as we rebuilt the life. And to think, since that day, I'm sitting here today, had so many wonderful experiences. Our family's still together, 6 grandchildren. All the children that my wife basically raised on her own, I would say. You would agree with that, I'm sure. While I was working or playing, one of the two, they're all very comfortable in their lives. They're very successful in their own right. They're doing what they want to do in a good way. And you look from the ashes of bankruptcy and addiction and all those things. I think love has a lot to do with it, no question. It's the biggest part of it, but I think there's other things too. There's that word I think you used earlier in the podcast, loyalty to the family, loyalty to what is real and what isn't, and those kinds of things. So there's other factors there that is the glue that kept it together. I never heard my parents ever argue. Ever. Never heard them. I heard my mom one time, I can picture it now, sitting on the fireplace, and she was crying. I came out and saw her crying. I never saw her cry before. She said, "Well, your dad's just so insensitive." And I'm afraid I got that gene also, to a certain extent. But that's the worst I ever saw. So we grew up in a home that was loving, but not the kind of loving that I think people think about. It was loving because they worked hard, provided us with the ability to join Boy Scouts, to live in a community that was wholesome and all those kinds of things. So when you add all those things together, like outlier, loyalty, love, I think it has allowed me as a parent, as a business person, and as a person to live his life without a tremendous amount of remorse on anything. To come back to your question about did I feel guilty about did I cause his addiction? Maybe, I don't know, but I don't think about it, And,
I don't think that's how it works, but I do. No. You helped me get sober. I mean, do you remember? Like, what would you say to someone today who's a father with a kid that's struggling? I mean,
yeah, that's such a tough question because what you used to tell me, you got to be tough. You got to be tough love. It's got to be tough love. You got to walk away sometime along the line. I couldn't walk away. I just couldn't walk away. I'm sorry. And it went against, again, I didn't pay attention to what everybody was saying to do.
Yeah, but if you walked away, I might be dead. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, that's why I don't, at this point in my career, I don't believe in giving up on your kids and kicking them out to the street or whatever like that. I'm also not a parent, so I don't know what that looks like.
Right. I don't know how I would have felt even if I'd done what I did and it didn't turn out this way. If he died and I didn't do what they told me to do, I'm sure I would have had some guilt, right? I would have had to have had guilt. I don't care. So it's very complex. It's It's very complex, and it's just what saved me. I think through it all, what helped me get through is, going up every Sunday as many times as I could and listening to Dr. Bill.
Well, yeah, no, I went to this treatment center called Karen, and they had a guy by the name of Father Bill who did a non-denominational service every Sunday, which was cool because anyone was welcome. And he really spoke about the way that substance abuse affects a family. And it was powerful. And we got to sit next to each other together in that journey every Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd drive up, listen to Bob Seger, drive back, listen to Bob Seger, and then go to an Eagles game. Nah, he was great. And he had a big impact on me.
And what do you, today in your life, seeing me, my story, what is that, the way that I live, like, what does that bring up for you? Are you just grateful?
Brings up a lot. I'm grateful, obviously. I look at it in amazement, total amazement. I spend a lot of time walking. I walk a lot. It's my solace. And I get so blessed sometimes, and I'm almost there now, but I just cry. That how did this happen? That I'm sitting here today with a wonderful family, a son who is doing just amazing stuff. I can't tell you how many people have come up to me and said, your son is just, unbelievable. He's helped my family, he helped my son. I go to the gala, I just do these things. And I add that all up and I say, I think my biggest regret right today, if you want to know what it is I wish I could be more involved in release recovery and what you're doing, but it's your thing and you're doing such great work and the whole organization and all the people involved and I try and I'm now sort of trying to balance what I could do for release with CVI because I'm both doing what I would hope I could do, and that is save lives, in the background, just be in the background, doing something that would help both entities. And if I have any regrets, I'm not doing enough to do that. But I hope to in the future to be able to do that. Well, I have some remaining good years left, I think, but you never know, right? It changes on a dime, just like for a good friend of mine, Dale Tower, who fell in the kitchen and broke his spine, and just in the kitchen by himself. And, how freaky is that?
Yeah.
So, it's just a blessed life I've had. And I just want to thank the God that we all worship, whoever that is, that I've had that blessed life and give back some way, shape, or form. Again, that's...
I guess I'm just sitting here thinking, like, one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation is just for the wisdom piece, and I think I would be a fool to not ask you, like, what do you tell a younger Doug Clark? What do you tell me? What do you tell someone who's in the middle of their life and focused on the wrong things? What do you... I know you say that you don't live with a lot of regret, and I appreciate that, but there are, all these interviews that they'll do with people on their, on their deathbed, and they'll kind of say, spent a lot of time doing things that weren't as important. So for you, like seeing the world today, like what is important to you?
Wow, that's a heavy question. To me, the legacy I want to leave, and why, and again, this may be rationalization. You may think it's rationalization, but I've told your mother this many, many times. I have worked hard to build a business and to build wealth so that my family could do, even along the way, could do, with the exception of those maybe 5 years when we were coming out of bankruptcy, could do what, my family couldn't afford, and just make sure that that legacy would be there for not only my children, but for my grandchildren, that there was enough to make sure they lived good lives, could live good lives. Now, is that a lot of people say, well, I'm not leaving any, I'm going to leave, I'm going to spend my money now, and, I don't care about, they care about their children, but they're not going to be thinking like that. And maybe it's a rationalization on my part. I don't know. Again, I come back to, I've thought about my deathbed. I don't think I'm going to think like that. I don't think I'm going to think that I've had a hell of a life, Jesus, and I'm so thankful for it. That's what I think I'm going to be thinking when on my deathbed. I don't think I'm going to.
So what allowed you to get to that?
What's that?
What's the secret to feeling that way? Just living life to your fullest. I mean, like that, because that's an answer that I think anyone would want to give to that question.
I'm not sure I understand.
I think that's that's the kid who feels like an outlier and says, that was very profound, the story about your father building the foundation.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that, I feel like you can go get different answers. People say they regret, or I wish I could have. I mean, like, I'm more attracted and find that answer, what I hope to say as well, because it just, you get that way by living your life with shit happens, I'm going to keep going, this is part of the journey, not drown yourself in what could have been or what was, and why some people are like that and some people aren't. I mean, that's probably, the brain, genetics, but I'd much rather be that way, than trying to think about all the ways that I wish I didn't regret, or if I had been more. Because, Dr. G said the same thing. Like, I was working, and I think about that too. I'm working, to try to make a life, to satisfy my own individual ideas of ambition and success. And that gets harder when you have a family and you want to be there with them, but like, you're also like, I'm still, me, and I have ideas for myself, and I don't think you ever cut it clean, so I appreciate
I love
that.
the answer.
I know you love the answer.
It's amazing.
No, I know you love the answer.
That's and I'm not surprised by the answer, because I've watched you live your life to the fullest.
Yeah, I think there's two things that I would like to say in response to that, also to your comments there. I had a dream that I was going to race in Indianapolis. It was a big dream. I mean, my dad and I listened to the Indy 500 we'd sit in front of a radio and listen to the Indy 500. And his favorite driver, and I had my favorite drivers. It was an event we had every year, and it was if you don't set big goals, you'll never reach them, right? So driving the Indianapolis 500, taking a company public was always two things that I always wanted to accomplish in my life. So I struck out and got as far as AAA ball. I didn't get to the Indianapolis 500. But you know what I think about that? The way I think about that today is I tried. And if I'm not sitting here today saying, boy, I wish I'd given that driving in the Indy 500, I wish I'd really tried to do that. I really tried to do it. I didn't get there. But I think I'd be feeling worse today thinking I never tried.
Yeah.
I never tried. than to say, why didn't I try, So I think that's profound. I think another thing that sort of is embedded, and it's so simple, I had a mentor who passed away, and I went to his service in Martha's Vineyard this fall. And he created his own service, and he had a big impact on my life. He really did when I was at Drexel. Gave me advice that I carried through forever in life. But the song, and when I listened to this song, I said, wow, that is me a little bit. And it was Frank Sinatra singing "I Did It My Way." Listen to the words of that song someday. That song, I did it my way. And that's the way I feel today sitting here. And not all of it worked out to great to be a great result, but at least I did it my way and I tried. And so, but I couldn't have done it without a wife and a family that let me do it, and without, some sort of crisis intervention. So
yeah, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned mom. I mean, mom is obviously she's the rock, man. We're so lucky to have her.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look at I would say, what I tell anybody, look at the 4 children. They're a product of her.
Yeah.
Look at the 4 children. They're a product of her.
She's the best.
That's what I would say. So I've been blessed all the way, right? And so it's just that's how I sit here today. And I don't know whether we got into some of the kinds of stuff that would help parents that are dealing with addiction and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we might have to do a part 2. I mean, you might have to really come back and dig into some of that stuff. 'Cause
I would love to.
I feel like there's a lot on the table here, and the thing that's important for me to say just to anyone listening, I mean, mine and my father's story is unique to us. It worked for us.
Right.
There's no guarantee this way works for someone else, and we've done that with love, with communication, with some fights, with some disagreements, with all that shit. And we stand here today very best friends because we have the ability to talk about things, and that's something I've learned in my recovery. And I think my recovery has probably impacted you in some positive ways, and vice versa. Your ability to stay open-minded and not be, square peg round hole with some of this stuff has saved my life.
Well, I think we were talking a little earlier about wisdom. And I think wisdom is a very personal thing. Wisdom isn't this great, grand theory to me, anyhow. I think wisdom is very personal. And we're sitting here probably twice your age. And I just heard a saying the other day. It's pretty impactful for me as I think about it. He said, there are no shortcuts to wisdom. There are no shortcuts to wisdom. And a lot of wisdom's gained only through experience, right? Experiencing different things. So there are no silver bullets out there for wisdom. And so, that's sort of where it's at too.
I think Sarah wanted to chime in with one from the bleachers. Yeah, what's up?
What person in Zac?
What parts of you are you most proud of to see?
So the question is, what parts of you, Dad, do you see in me, and are you most proud of? What have you passed on to me? I have the list.
I'll give you my top 3.
Let's hear it.
Honesty. Transparency. You are what you are. You are what you say. There's no bullshit. And what's the saying for release?
Keep going?
Keep going. They're my top 3.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's your top 3 or...
No, I definitely admire your honesty, and for a long time I wasn't very honest, so that is true. You know, transparency is hard. I'm actually... You know, it's been a weird ride for me being in the public eye at times and probably being too transparent in moments that I don't really need to be, honestly.
Yeah.
It's like we had that conversation, like real friends and deal friends, you know, like I'm at a point in my life where I'm really leaning into my real friends. You know, the deal friends, the people that want shit from me, or, you know, and you've taught me a little bit of that, you know. But the keep going thing, I mean, yeah, that's you through and through. I mean, like...
Perseverance.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's it. That's what we talk about every day. And I don't, and I see myself in, I see you and me in business and some other things. Like, we want things done the way that we want them done. And that's a blessing and a curse, you know, and we have expectations of people. And sometimes that gets us hurt. You know, like we bet on people. You and I bet on people. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that doesn't work out for us because not all people are loyal. Nor do they have to be. I think we just want people to love us. Yeah. And that's just the Clark way. And we're sensitive at times.
Yeah.
So
you much more than me.
Sensitive?
Yeah.
We could have that conversation. I'd like to dig in there in a part 2. I think you, like me, love validation and hugs and to know that you're appreciated. And you are, and I'll tell you that right here. You are appreciated. I love you, and you know, I wouldn't be here without you.
It's been a pretty awesome day.
Yeah. All right, that's it. Thanks, guys.